Down your unders. Down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 137 of the Art of War Down Under podcast. My name is Adam Camilleri, and thank you so much for joining me for this episode. You are champions, one and all. This is the 9th stats episode, live stats ladder update thing on the show. Myself and the wonderful Falcon, hello, sir, have been updating and maintaining a living faction ladder, a live faction ladder that we update. Usually we try and do it every 3 months. During the COVID and the dark times, we did it like once every 6 months, maybe. I think there was like an 8-month gap between one of them. And but this one has been exactly 12 episodes in between. So exactly 12 weeks since our last ones. This is perfect, cherry ripe, exactly where we want it to be. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm awesome. Just living my best life, man. How are you?
I'm good. You're in the process of running your own convention. You've lovingly called it what?
Falcon. Yeah, Falcon.
Yeah. I made you say it so that you can cringe.
Yeah, it's it wasn't my idea, but I've run with it. It's in conjunction with the East Coast Comic Book Expo. It happens June 10th and 11th here in Moncton. I haven't done a lot of advertising yet because I'm kind of waiting for some. There's a couple details we're trying to iron out. The city that we're hosting it in is going to be providing some extra support, so I'm hoping I can lower the cost of tickets and stuff in advance of everything coming out, which will be super. But we've got a huge venue. I've got tables and terrain for 40K galore. We're looking at trying to have both a 40K and AOS major in the same spot. I just ordered the trophies, so they'll be here in the next month. Yeah, things are looking up. I'm pretty excited, and that's been a little bit of my focus. My work with Goo and Hammer has been taking up a good amount of my free time as well, and just working and being a single dad and all that the stuff that does.
Dude, so. Intense. You've already plugged the things and the stuffs. This is a 2-part podcast, guys. If you want to get the second part of this one, which will be a bunch of stats questions, lovingly curated and chucked up by our Patreon group and our Discord server. And Peter and I are going to answer all those questions. We're going to talk some smack as well about the state of the game, talk about our musings and findings and feelings, maybe have some DNMs. We will see what happens. But please, if you want to go on that jump onto that part 2, you can find it over on Art of War Down Under over on Patreon. I'm recording from the Florida Art of War Trap House. I'm using one of the standing microphones, and I'm using a brand new recording software as well. If this audio is noticeably different, hopefully it is better. And if it is, please give me that feedback so I can know what to buy when I get home. Because naturally, when I'm traveling on the road, I use a very portable, it's just a laptop and a headset pretty much to get by, because I never know if I'm going to have a better setup. And when I get home, I intend to have a much better setup in about the month after I get back, which is going to be in about probably about 2 months, a month and a half from now. So you can look forward to that then. But if this is the quality that you guys like, if this is a notable step up from my usual fare, let me know, and I'll make sure to get what I've got right in front of me. Peter, it's stats time. Tell us about the data set we are working with, how much you got, and what have you managed to gather and pull together since last time.
So this one's a little bit different. The last time we ran one was just prior to LVO, and we kind of used that. We used a data set that kind of took us almost into January. I think it was just at the beginning of January, because LVO kind of marked the last weekend of the Nephilim, GT pack, and we moved into Arks of Omen. I've kind of ignored that 2-week period that we had there. So that last 2 weeks of January, I'm not including in this data set where normally I would have in between, simply because it's a completely different mission pack. Yeah. And we had a balanced data slate and an MFM that completely upended the game, right? We knew it was going to. So I think, in terms of changes from one data slate, from one rankings to another, this is going to be the biggest in terms of changes, because like the S tier factions for the most part are no longer S tier factions. The A tier, most of the A tier factions are no longer A tier. Like we've seen massive jumps for some factions and just absolute, bottom out drops for others. So we're really using basically like a 6 to 8 week period right now, from the beginning of February until this weekend. So like about 7 weeks of data. It's still, because we're looking at like 12 GTs a week these days. It's still
pretty extensive.
Well, it's still almost, I believe it is just over 100 tournaments. You're looking at we're still looking in like well above the 5,000 to 6,000 games worth that I'm usually looking for to start saying what is good and what isn't. Like we're looking at 15,000, 16,000 games easily already. So
not insignificant indeed. So jumping in, have you made any advancements in the tracking of stats recently? Anything new to this data set that may not have been here last time, or anything you've got in the works that'll be in place for the next one?
I'm still kind of running it the old-fashioned way. I do bean counting, but like with the help of Goonhammer, we're able to scrape a lot of data, make the data accumulation side easier for me because it's mostly automated. So it's more for now. My days are spent mostly being like, this doesn't look right. Can someone double check that we did it properly, or did we miss an event, or what have you? And then. So I have more time to just scan what's already there. And not only that, but not only do I use the stuff, the calculations that I put in place that Goonhammer now just automates for me. I do look at what, my compatriots over at StatCheck do, because they do amazing work. And I try to study what I can of their work with their, CRS scores and overrepresentation. I do try to take a little bit of that into account. Luckily, the thing about good stats, good nitty-gritty stats, is often they just reinforce a position that you already have once you're good at looking at the data, right? Like if I know to look at first round loss and TWIP, they will generally match what you're going to expect to see out of the combined scores you see out of, say, StatCheck or anybody else.
Yeah, totally makes sense to me. All right, going back through our most listed definitely most listed faction ladder, starting at the D tier. This is the bottom factions performing from the most recent one we did. So about 3 months ago. So this is as we were leaving the Nephilim data set. D tier consists of Imperial Fists, hilariously Dark Angels, Deathwatch, Raven Guard, Iron Hands, Black Templar, Space Wolves, Salamanders, Ultramarines, and AdMech. So literally just about every Space Marine, with the exception of, I think, one. Yes, with the exception of Blood Angels. That is everyone and AdMech in the D tier. The C tier consists of Death Guard, Astra Militarum, and Grey Knights. B tier is Orcs, Drakari, Chaos Knights, and Blood Angels. A tier, Necrons, Custodes, Tau, Imperial Knights, Chaos Space Marines, Craftwork Eldar, Jinsteel Cult, and Sisters of Battle. And then the S tier, Votan, Thousand Suns, Chaos Demons, Tyranids, and Harlequins. And if I remember correctly, I think our Votan prediction, that was without much of a data set to back it. That was our more of a prediction than an informed choice. Yeah. And was this
we'd seen some results, so we knew they were capable. But it was a very small data set.
Yeah, and was this before or after the pre-nerfs?
This was after the first 2 sets of nerfs.
It was after both sets of nerfs. Okay, so it was after the point. Yeah, okay. So, and we still opportunistically put them in S tier as the data, initial data was telling us, because of course they weren't played extensively at LVO. A lot of the models weren't available, and of course the same for Uprising.
Now maybe I'm wondering if we didn't. Let me see.
I've got a feeling we did this, but we did this like 2 or 3 weeks before LVO, because it was exactly 12 weeks ago.
Yeah, I believe we did it after the first set of nerfs, probably not the second.
Yeah, I got a feeling we did it before most of the models were out and in people's hands. But anyway, back again, just to summarize, every Space Marine, with the exception of Blood Angels, is in D tier plus AdMech, Death Guard, and Grey Knights, Orcs, Drakari, Chaos Knights, Blood Angels, Necrons, Custodes, Tau, Imperial Knights, Chaos Space Marines, Craftwood Eldar, GSC, and Sisters, and then Votan, T-Suns, Chaos Demons, Tyranids, and Harlequins. And of course, the T-Suns were there because of that ridiculous Flamers and T-Suns build. So, my dude, without further ado, let us jump in. What is in that D tier to your best knowledge?
So right now, Imperial Fists somehow, even with all the buffs Marines got, I mean, it's because no one's playing them. It really,
Exactly right.
literally
Exactly.
no one play because they're the worst Marines.
Yeah.
But still, like a 25% win rate at this point.
There ain't enough free war gear in the world to make those rules.
For the like 10 people that are still trying to make them work, like they're winning 1 in 4 games. So Imperial Fist definitely still at the bottom. White Scars and Death Watch statistically 38% win rates, very low average first round loss, no T-whip. Once again, nobody's playing them, and I think that's a I think that's a bit of a hit on like it's more the fact that there are what we'll see later S tier Space Marine armies that people are just going to play instead.
Yeah,
and Death Watch is hard to put together. Like you need to customize everything every time there's an update. So
now White Scars is interesting because White Scars is good.
I believe they are good, yes,
but
they're
being overshadowed by the Blood Angels Hanger Honorers, and now I think it's probably Space Wolves.
Space Wolves and Iron Hands. I like the big so the Space Wolves players because they're basically running a White Scars list. That's what's happening there. I think with the White Scars because I do believe there's a lot of play in White Scars. It's just why play that when
exactly you play the same thing, just as good in combat from possibly earlier in the game, and combi melter, multi-melter, literally everywhere. Everywhere. Anyway, anything else in GTR?
Oh, yes. Chaos Space Marines, I believe at this point are now
wow.
I believe like most Chaos Space Marine lists are D tier. It's actually hard. You know what? No, I'm gonna hold off on saying Chaos Space Marines. AdMech, they've won 1 event. They have hit T-Whip twice.
Good old Alex and Glazios from Australia.
Yeah. They're still sitting at only a 37% win rate. And Alex is an amazing player out of Australia. But I also heard that the terrain at that event maybe was a little bit open on some of the tables. And so when you're playing a massively shooty army like Alex is, like that's just going to be amazing, right? Like I heard he practically tabled Brody turn 1 in their game. In the final turn, in the final round of that game, Brody Middleton. And then I would say probably Thousand Suns. I think that's your D tier now. Thousand Suns, AdMech, Death Watch, White Scars. Like they're in there just statistically, but it's because nobody's playing them. I believe more than anything. And then Imperial Fists
makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, Imperial Fists being literally the worst of the Space Marines, and they have literally been for the entirety of this edition. Like that has not changed at any point. And then White Scars because they are probably the worst of the melee Marines, unfortunately. Even though they're still very good, and Death Watch very hard to put together. Somehow still feel expensive compared to every other Marine.
They're still expensive, and if you're going to run shooty Marines, you're just going to run Iron Hands instead.
Exactly right. Or run Raven Wing. They're so much better. AdMech probably for the same reasons as the others. Like there's actually just a very small player base. I think AdMech's actually very strong.
I think they should be very strong. They were, to me, when we first saw the changes to points in the new MFM. To me, like they got such a glow up just off points alone.
I don't think I highlighted it enough how much they got, and plus their secondaries are actually good now. They're not the best in the game, but they are very, very solid.
Like they definitely feel like they should be more of a B, like a high B, a high C, B, low B tier army.
Yeah,
but that like they're not putting up results. Like and it's so far it's showing. That's not to say that we might like Alex or somebody might go on a run with them. But right now, and then Thousand Suns losing the benefits, like losing the fact that Flamers are really only good now in mono demons, is a huge hit to that army. Their secondaries aren't good enough to carry them any longer.
Literally today, I played my Grey Knights into Nick on T Suns, and Matt, they just haven't got much play. They just really don't, because they just have no melee, and this game is so polarized by your ability to shoot and punch, or to stay at and shoot at 24 inches or further away. The fact that they need to get they're in 8 essentially, or they do all the damage at 18 inches because of all their spells and their smites, just means that they just get punched. They just get punched, and they can't stop it. So they're in a rough spot. I'd like to see some changes coming in for them. Seriously, just go through and just give Scarabocol Terminators another attack. Everyone just gets another attack. just do it. They really need it. So in C tier, I have assume this is where Chaos Space Marines are going because you do want to put them in date.
Chaos Space Marines are here because like Emperor's Children have fallen off the map. Creations of Bile fell off the map. Like the hits to Chaos Space Marines, losing Armor of Contempt was so massive for them, more than anybody else, I think.
The same story as the T-Suns, but they actually they're the inverse. They do all their damage in combat. Their shooting is barely noticeable on the radar compared to what we're dealing with at the moment. You look at what Iron Hands, Space Wolves, Dark Angels produce, and then you look at what the best shooting out of Chaos Space Marines is not even 500 points of the best shooting out of Iron Hands. Like it's kind of obscene. And now their durability's gone as well.
Like we've seen a couple of people hit T-Whip with Chaos Marines lists, but it's like
mostly Black Legion or
I think it's mostly word bearers more than anything. Because like you can make, especially now with Cogs of Vashtor, even though Vashtor himself is like a gigantic steaming pile of garbage.
his army for now is actually sick. It's actually kind of cool.
Like the stuff you can do with them, like there could be a Chaos Space Marine list there that'll do something because you can make a Lord of Skulls do some pretty nasty stuff. I
think 100% think there is a list there, but it needs to be on. I think it needs player place terrain at a minimum to be able to go, or it needs to be at a team's list. But dude, seriously, double disco with Vashtor, two or three decimators, a couple of venom crawlers, and a Lord of Skulls. That is a list.
That's a good list. Yeah, that'll do damage.
That will shake people to their core.
Yeah.
All right, what else is in
Tyranids, 42% win rate. They've hit T-Whip 4 times. They've gone undefeated once with a Leviathan build.
Wow.
Leviathan Gaunt spam, I believe, was what did it. But still, like they really felt like they got hit with so many nerfs. And finally, like they had their back broken. Finally, after like how many times we tried to GW finally was just like, fine, let's just murder the book. So Tyranids way down, 42% win rate now, 1.7 average first round loss, which is extremely low. They have had 4 people still hit T-Whip though, and they have had that one undefeated. So like there's still a possibility of game in the right scenario, but it's like crash and burn.
Yeah.
Death Guard, also a C tier army. We have seen also a Death Guard list go undefeated. But still a 43% win rate, slightly better than NIDS. After that, we're looking at Imperial Knights.
Wow, that's a big drop off.
They are also at a 42% win rate. Average first round loss 1.75, so only slightly better.
Overtly, what changed to make Knights worse? I mean, obviously, a bunch of their Predator lists got better. I mean, Iron Hands is notably a horrific matchup for them.
Iron Hands is a horrific matchup. Gene Stealer Cult's getting better. It's terrible for Imperial Knights. And Dark Angels, I
mean, outside taking the Mortal Wound, magic, and rolling enough sixes, there's really nothing they got. They really have nothing for that matchup.
Yeah, they're the best matchups in the game. They really haven't.
But also, we just forgot about Guard.
Oh yes, sorry. And Guard
do such bad things to Knights.
So we have had 3 people go undefeated with Knights, but they were, I believe, all at very small GTs.
Yeah.
And it there's a lot of people still playing Knights, so they can't carry it. It's still terribly low.
We forgot to do the thing again, mate. So this is the 9th one we're doing here, and we've only done the thing twice. What does T-Whip mean?
Oh yes.
Let's define our definitions.
So for me, as someone that's been like following stats now for 5 years now, the 2 main stats I look at before I look at anything else to determine like how a faction is performing are average first round loss, which is like the average time a list loses its first game, because that's a very high identifier to me after all this time, like the best identifier of how well a faction's performing. And then the other one is a statistic that we call T-Whip, tournament and winning position, and that is a percentage of the lists that go at least 4-0 at an event. So when we look at all of the events that have happened basically since the beginning of February until now. How many lists have at least gone 4-0 or better?
Yep.
And then what percentage of those lists are for any of these factions? So in this case, so if you have, say, like a 10% T-Whip, it means 10% of the lists that have gotten to 4-0 have been for this faction. And you can look at that, and then you can compare it to how many, like what the percentage of lists of that faction actually are. So let's say 2% of players run Harlequins. This is something that happened in the past. We'll have like 2 or 3% of players run Harlequins. If only 2 to 3% of players run Harlequins, but 20% of the lists that hit T-Whip are Harlequins, Harlequins are probably a problem, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If 10% of your lists are Guard and 10% of the lists that hit T-Whip are Guard, it means Guard are in a very good spot. They might be a little overtuned, but they're not. Their chances are they're not broken, right? But you still want to look at other stats to verify that. But that's just like an example. So those are things that we do. So when I talk about T-Whip percentage or our factions that have gone to T-Whip, that's what we're talking about.
And those are the things you are weighing up when you decide where things go in these.
Yeah, and so for me, like the first thing I do is I look at average first round loss. Is it because an average faction should be somewhere around 2 to 2.1. To me, a faction that's average to slightly good will be in that range. If you're in that 1.89 to 2, it's probably fine. It could be a B tier faction. Might even be an A tier faction based on other statistics, but chances are it's a B tier faction. Lower than a 1.9 or 1.85 or so, you're looking at C. And then once you get below 1.8, it's a D tier faction generally. Once you get past 2.3, that's like my holy shit, you need to fix something GW. Anytime we've had a faction above a 2.3 for average first round loss, like they have been considered
broken,
like absolutely busted. And we have gotten as high as over 3 in the past with like that last time we had Iron Hands and Raven Guard at the top.
It's so funny you say last time. How interesting. And we're doing it's all the same again. It's so funny.
It's kind of the same again. And we'll get there as we talk. But so that's one of the things. And then for T-Whip, generally like it's a little more malleable, like I said, because in the past we've had very strong factions with 10% of T-Whip, but at the same time they also were 10 to 12% of the people playing that list, like playing any kind of game. So it wasn't as bad as, say, when Harlequins or Tyranids were at it, where they were only 5%, but they still made up 10 or 15% of T-Whip. Or, when Space Marines have been good, generally you'll see 9 or 10% of people playing Space Marines, and then 40% of them are the ones hitting T-Whip, right? And that's problematic. So,
yeah, absolutely is. Is there anything else in C tier?
Where did I stop? Imperial Knights. I would say Necrons are C tier army.
Yep.
There's a good amount. And then there's a lot that are kind of on the cusp of B to C, like Drukhari are probably in my opinion, a C tier army. They have a 1.84 average first round loss. They have had 2 people go undefeated, but they're like a 43% win rate.
Yeah.
Ultramarines, they've had 1 guy and go undefeated, a 40% win rate. They're another faction where, like, as Marines, if Iron Hands didn't exist, they'd probably be way better.
Exactly right. They do some awesome stuff, but there's just one that exists that is just supremely better.
Yeah. And the thing we're seeing here is I think there's a lot of very low B, high C factions, because like Necrons and Sisters are also factions I would normally say are C tier, and I will probably just throw them in there as well. Sisters have a 1.79 average first round loss. Necrons 1.77.
So the Sisters is an interesting one, because on paper, it didn't look like they got hurt that much, but it really shows that the lethality of the game means that a toughness 3 body without armor contempt is just percentage-wise so much easier to kill all of a sudden. You don't have any ability to spike for transhuman or all these other sprinkle defensive options, like so few storm shields as well on key units. Like it's wild.
So I would probably argue that Sisters could be and should be at the end of the low end of B tier.
Yep.
Because despite having a 44% win rate, they have had 7 players hit T-Whip.
That's not insignificant.
That is definitely not insignificant. I mean, it's only slightly less than some of the factions we consider good. And they've had 4 people go undefeated with lists.
Yeah.
Necrons have also had 4 go undefeated, but it's basically the 4 people that hit T-Whip. So that's a little different. And Sisters have dropped to only being like 3% of the field, right? And they're still hitting these numbers. So I would say Sisters are probably your lowest B, Necrons your highest C.
So Sisters lowest B, lowest C. Oh, sorry, Necron's the highest of the Cs.
Yep. Necron highest Cs, and then I would put the Sisters at the bottom of B. And with a lot of these, like especially the last few we've talked about, if someone was listening and they're like, I think they're B tier, and you put them in C, I don't give a shit. You're probably right. It's the differentials become so small. When you get to it gets kind of like who cares? Don't play these factions. Just don't. At least until 10th edition comes out in 3 months. Just don't stop playing the game. No. And we mentioned Drukhari. We mentioned Drukhari. Also at the bottom of B, I would say, is Tau at this point. They took a huge hit. They have very similar numbers actually to Drukhari. They just have slightly better T-Whip results.
Yep.
But same average first round loss, same win percentage.
Does that just mean there's better Tau players than Drukhari players?
I think it's just there's more. I think that's it.
Sorry, I was just doing that to stir the pot. There absolutely is.
There's just double the Tau players.
There are a lot of Tau players.
Yeah, and I think that's the only thing holding them down. You could argue that they're a C tier faction as well, and that's massive because in the past, the last couple, our B and A tiers were massive, and I think now they're almost all like C and low B. They're so we've cut down significantly, boys.
Yeah. So in the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, we had 13 factions in the D and C tier, and now what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We still have 13.
Okay.
Still 13 in both. Have you mentioned Raven Guard?
Oh, I'm not. I'm. You know what? Raven Guard should probably still be a C tier faction.
Yeah.
They've only had 1-2 people play it, so. I like Salamanders and Raven Guard. I skipped completely because they barely have any results.
Should chuck them both in C, or what do you reckon?
Yeah, the thing is, they have actually really good average first round losses, but so few people play them that it's not statistically significant.
Just a couple of faction specialists, especially on the Raven Guard side. Just a couple of faction specialists holding.
There's
the whole
literally 6 people have played Raven Guard in 2 months, so it's
only because the Art of War boys won't let me.
It really just means one guy hit T-Whip and it carried the rest of the 5 guys basically.
Well, now we have 15 factions in the bottom 2 brackets. So back to the B tier. We have Sisters and Tau so far. What's next?
I almost want to put Sisters and Tau back down to C, but anyway,
we could totally do that, brother. If that's what.
Let's do it because there's a huge jump to the next.
We follow the stats, mate, and we follow the stats exclusively for this. Our feelings come second.
Yeah.
So, what's the first of the B tiers?
So this is where we go into Harlequins.
Ooh,
Harlequins,
this is
49% win rate, but their player base has dropped to
by
nothing.
5/6.
Right? They make up 0.5% of people playing the game right now. 0.5.
Yikes. So there's 2 dudes. But those 2
there's
dudes,
less people playing Harlequins than playing pure Black Legion. There's less people it's not good for they took so many nerfs, but they still manage a decent win rate. We have seen them getting to top tables frequently.
I'm not sure they got nerfed that much. I just think that all the stat checky portions got taken away and all the jank got given back. All the things that were actually hard to use about Harlequins got added back in, the hard things to leverage, but they do have a lot of levers to pull, but their ability to just Unga Bunga stats check you with Twilight and or ability in transport, that's 100% got taken away.
Yeah. But you're still seeing Lights put up results in Canada and in other places. We've had them hit T-Whip once, but we've seen them get to top tables. I've several top 4s, a lot of 4-1s that are Harlequins players. There's a reason why they're almost at a 50% win rate. Blood Angels I would put next in that B tier. 47% win rate. They've dropped a lot since LVO. But that said, like, they're still a very good close combat army. Sam Procopio has put up results multiple times up here. He's won a couple events, gone undefeated a couple of times. Like, they still have game. They have you can just take 20 some odd Inferno pistols and another 8 or 9 Melta-Guns in a list. And that will do work as long as you're patient, right? You can't just charge 20 Sanguinary Guard into the middle of the board and win a game. So like a lot of the lower end play is gone, but if you're patient and you still play a tighter game, you have a chance, right? Grey Knights, I would say also B tier, 46% win rate, but their average first round loss is almost at 2. It's at 1.94. They've won a few events. They've hit T-Whip 4 or 5 times.
You just wait, mate. You just wait. I got Valdosta coming up this weekend, rocking the GKs. We're going to turn this baby around. It's T-Whip time. Wait, I already got T-Whip once. No. I have to go. It was a 3-dayer. Never mind.
Okay. Black Templar next. Black Templar, I think, have the stuff to be an A-tier army, to be honest, but they don't have the player base for it. But 1.98 average first round loss. They've got T-Whip 5 times. They've gone undefeated 3 times. Ben Sherwin's mechanized Black Templar list, I'm super in love with. I feel that has
it's really good.
Amazing legs, because I mean, like Impulsors with a 5-up invuln and a free multi-melta, Gladiators with that 5-up invuln. Yep. And then you add all the close combat, and you get that amazing secondary potential with the Oath of whatever the Vows one, where all you have to do is get an Assault Marine squad into a back objective at the end of the game.
Yes.
For an extra 5 points on top of the 7 or 8 you're probably going to score. Like they're really good. They don't. You can't just like keyboard mash your way to victory with them, but like I really like the lists. And then I would say the other army that's in B tier is Leagues of Votann, and they are at the top. Like there's a small argument to be made that they're like a low end A tier, but 49% win rate isn't the best.
Man,
they have had 9 people hit T-Whip. They've had 7 lists go undefeated. Average first round loss is the same as Templars, though, at a 1.9. So
that is fascinating to me that they're sitting there. There's so many opinions. It seems like everyone's got a Votann opinion. Like it's everyone has like Votann players think they got nerfed too hard. I actually think they got nerfed too hard, or harder than they should have. I don't think they needed the second round of nerfs.
No,
but
I think I think the big problem with Votann right now is I believe they have 2 lists, and people still want to run Hearthguard, and I blame Richard Siegler for that. I put every time I go into any kind of Leagues of Votann chat and I see someone making a list, they're always like, and here's my 4 or my 5 to 8 Hearthguard, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah,
they're like a million points.
So I don't get it from Richard. I think they're terrible. Like, I don't care if they shoot me. I don't care if they charge me. I don't care about them enough to kill them. I just don't care about Hearthguard.
Just take like 12 to 15 bikes.
Yep.
Take 9 Thunderkins, 8 or 9.
Thunderkin is sick.
Take 9 Thunderkin. Take 1 or 2 Land Fortresses. Take a call. Take either a Forge Master or a Grimnir. You pick. I don't give a shit. That's your list. You will win games.
You will win games.
Go Emir or Thurian League. If you want to go Thurian League, it's because you want to be a baller and take High King Diddly Doo.
And then one of the super guns, the Magna rifles on the
Uthar the Destined. Right, and then and then you take a Magna rifle on your big boy, so you kill everything, and then he kills everything in close combat because he's actually a boss in close combat.
Well, he's 5.
He's
like 5 Zerkers for you. He's great.
Yeah, and then you go Emir and you just kill people with beams and Zerkers, and you live that life, and your bikes do all the work for you, guys. Like it's not hard, but you're at the same time. Like when you can only play basically one of 2 ways and they're almost the exact same way anyway, like it's not the most fun thing.
And then the secondaries are great. Like
the secondaries are awful.
Yeah, they're god awful. They might. I'm gonna have another tier list where I just rank the faction secondaries and the faction potential secondaries. That could be a very fun one. But I do agree with this B tier. So right now, from the bottom, D tier comprised of Imperial Fists, White Scars, Deathwatch, Admech, and Thousand Suns. C tier consists of Raven Guard, Salamanders, Chaos Space Marines, Tyranids, Death Guard, Imperial Knights, Drukhari, Ultramarines, Necrons, and Sisters. and Tau. That is quite extensive now. And then B tier is Harlequins, Blood Angels, Grey Knights, Black Templars, and Votann. What does that leave us for the A tier?
So A tier, we'll start with Adeptus Custodes. I think at the beginning of Arks, there was a little bit of talk that this might have been an S tier army after we saw Liam Hackett go, all the way in with Solar Watch. That does still seem to be like the list. The Solar Watch, 20 or 30 wardens plus whatever else. It's got great legs. It's an amazing list. It's definitely like an A tier list. We've seen them hit T-Whip 11 times. They've gone undefeated 9. Their average first round loss is 2.1, which is in that range where I'm like, this is a good army. Like they're definitely slightly above average. And that's, I think, the big differential here from previous times when I've been following the meta is like there's a big gap. And you see it even in the win rates, which I know is kind of where GW mostly focuses. Like you go from Tau at a 43, and then the next best army is at like a 47 or 48. Like we skip several percentage points. And that's not the best. And really anything below a 46 or 47, you need to be looking at because there's something really wrong. Anyway, Custodes, 52% win rate. They've got that 2.1 average first round loss. Their T-Whip is, they make up 5% of T-Whip. They're 7% of the field. Like very solid A tier army. They have more than one build. Solar Watch.
They really do.
You can run Emperor's Chosen still because you can 4-up people to death and you get that mortal wound protection and everything. Like, it's good.
Yeah, I think they're more well-rounded than people think. I still think Calades is extremely powerful as well. The fact putting him in reserve for free, and they need no buffs, so they don't need to walk on to be in any aura ranges or anything. They just come on and just start dunking. I think,
and they outrange Lehman Russes. And
exactly, dude, spot on, man. They outrange so many of their contemporaries. But it needs to be the right meta. Like you can't just take that into Deathwing and think you're going to do anything.
No, you can't. And that's kind of the problem. Is that really for everybody is Deathwing
must be this tall to contend with Deathwing, and so few armies can actually do it.
Yeah. Next up, Space Wolves. Once again, like a 51% win rate. Slightly better average first round loss of 2.13. They also are only 1/3 of like the Custodes meta in terms of popularity, but they've still make up 4% of T-Whip. They're like the T-Whip ratio is 1.5, which is amazing. Because like that, even though they have that smaller crew, they're putting up results.
Really good results.
I mean, we've seen Brad Chester pull them out, and generally, like a good way to tell if an army's good is who's playing them.
Well, they also went undefeated at Rocky Mountain this past weekend. There was 2 undefeated armies, and it was Orcs and Space Wolves.
Space Wolves,
and they are the army that gets the most free stuff. Like, by far, there are people who've been claiming that they're playing approximately 3,000 points of Nephilim in a 2,000 point game now.
The amount of free Melta they get, the amount
it's obscene. It's absolutely obscene, mate.
Like, I mean, the list I'm running at this RTT, I'm coming up on the weekend. I have 26 free Inferno pistols, but like Space Wolves like beat that, right? Like, and they do it in style. And Whirlwind of Rage is still incredible. And then whether you go Born Heroes or say Stalwart or something for your secondary, it's amazing. And you fish for those 6s. You can put out Mortals. Like they have so much play. Yeah, Space Wolves definitely there. Next up, I would say in the A tier is Orcs. We've seen them win some really big events, mostly with like off pressure lists, but there's been some other stuff out there. 52.5% win rate, 2.15 for their average first loss. They've had 14 lists go into T-Whip, 7 undefeated. Really good numbers there. Chaos Demons.
Nice.
Same place as Orcs. Almost identical across the board in stats. Slightly better win rate.
If you notice, so far, the last 2 is where we're really starting to see armies with phenomenal secondary games take to the floor.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about Orcs that we didn't mention was how good their secondaries are. Chaos Demons in the same boat. 53% win rate, 2.15 on that average first loss. 7% of T-Whip. They make up 6% of the field. So, like 1.2, 1.3 for their T-Whip ratio. Awesome stuff. And now we're going to get into the next one I'll bring up because I think the next couple that'll be in A tier might be a little controversial statistically. They probably should be S tier armies, but being held back by, I believe, the fact that our player base is bad. The next one in A tier, I would say, is World Eaters, because they have come out very strong. They have some of the best secondaries in the game.
They have the best secondary game in the game. I strongly believe that. But I do believe the last 3 factions are the 3 best. Oh, sorry, and there's one more. Three of the top 4 best secondary games.
But like an average first loss already of 2.18.
Wow.
They make up 2.5% of the field, but there's 3.5% of T-Whip. Like, they've had 7 lists go undefeated in events already.
And they're terrifying. They're so scary, man.
They really are. They're definitely binary, in that there are some lists that just shoot them before they can do what they want to do. But if you have, like, as a Blood Angels player, like, I'm just like, I need you to get within 6 inches and stop moving for me to have a chance to do anything to you, right? Because otherwise you're just going to beat me on secondary. Because even when I kill you, you're winning. Like, and I don't like that. But anyway, like World Eaters. The next 2 that I would say are statistically A tier armies. You know what? One of them for sure is an A tier army statistically. The other one, there's a strong argument for S tier. From certain stats, is Guard. So this is one that, like, when you read the Guard Codex, specifically when you read what Karskins can do and you read what Finials can do, there's no reason why they should not be an S tier army, in my opinion.
There are 2 constants. There are 2 constants in 40k, apart from death and taxes, and that the Emperor is dead. Is that Orcs and Astra Militarum can never be S tier.
Like, it's
because the player base is too extensive, and so many of the players do not care about playing the good models or playing in a competitive fashion. There are so many people who are just treadheads and will just bring their Baneblade regardless of the terrain.
And the Baneblade's not even that, Adam, now.
It's the same for like Orcs. People just like, cool, I'm just going to bring my Gorkanaut. And, these people kind of tank the win rates pretty significantly.
But somehow, so they're like Guard, they make up almost 10% of the player base now.
And please don't think that was a negative remark. I love all of you players that do that. You guys are amazing.
So all the Guard players finally came back out of the woodwork because their book's good. They make up a little over almost 7.5% of the field right now. They make up 10% of T-Whip. So that's very strong. Given there's only one faction with more that take up more T-Whip than Guard. But they're also a big portion of the field, so it kind of evens out that way. A 51% win rate, so less than demons, less than orcs, less than custodes, but they've had 13 players go undefeated. They've hit T-Whip 19 times. They've hit G-Whip, which is a games and winning position, which is kind of a more something I haven't talked about, but it's a more granular look. So events that go longer. Not only did you go 4-0, you went 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. Like, it adds up. 34 games in winning position, which is there's only one faction with more than that in the game right now. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that their win rate is so low and their average first loss is, and by low, it's like a 51.5 and a 2.17, like they have all the makings of an S tier faction. They should be an S tier faction. They're just too popular to be an S tier faction.
Yes. I love that. They're a victim of their own popularity. I think that's hilarious. What is the other one you're alluding to?
So this one, and I'm going to put it in S tier because of its win rate alone, is Iron Hands. Okay. Iron Hands only has an average first loss of 2.14. So it's less than Orcs. It's less than Chaos Demons. It's less than Guard. It's less than World Eaters. It's less than several other factions, actually. Its T-Whip is 6%. They make up 3.5% of the field.
Okay.
So that's a 1.65 ratio, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why they bump up probably into my S tier. But more importantly, their win rate's almost 55%.
Yes.
That's for me, anything over a 54
is a problem.
And they are just over that limit. So where Chaos Demons are at like a 53, the Iron Hands being at a 54.5, they definitely fall into this is problematic. And we knew it was going to happen when you were allowed to stay in Dev Doctrine.
Exactly right. Yeah, that plus
was the
Codex
point.
Warfare has.
Yes.
So not only do they get to stay in Dev Doctrine, which activates their whole army, they get to get 15 points for doing it.
Yes, they get like easy access to Codex Warfare, and then honestly, like they're a great close combat army that's even better in shooting, and yeah, so like this was bound to happen. We knew they were going to be problematic. It's just there are a couple more factions that were more problematic that we also, I think, kind of expected. So yeah, so Iron Hands is like I'd call it an S tier army. The next faction that I would say is an S tier faction and probably just below Iron Hands, despite having a better average first round loss, is Craft World Eldar.
Wow, there we go. I was waiting to see where this happened. I thought they were going to be in upper A tier. So tell us about this data set. What's put them in S tier?
You could make that argument. Like someone could say, like, I think they're an A tier army, and I would be like, cool, you win. You always do. But their average first loss, it goes to 2.21, which it breaks a barrier to me. Like I said, 2.3 is extremely problematic. Anything over a 2.2 for me is when I start to go like, okay. They have a 54% win rate, which is another factor where I start to say, hey, we have a problem here.
Yep.
They basically have a 1-to-1 ratio of field representation to T-Whip. That's kind of like the one thing that would keep them from really being into that echelon of S tier, and why, if you said I think they're A tier, like it's cool with me. But what we've seen is that Hail of Doom list puts out enough damage when you combine it with something tanky, like an Avatar or go like an Asserman, like Aspect Warrior build.
Yeah.
Where like it's just a crippling amount of firepower. Shroud Runners basically guarantee you 15 on a secondary.
Yes. In addition, that they are a legitimate great counter to a bunch of the other Chaos Demons, Guard, and Orcs. Both loathe that unit. They do extremely well in those matchups.
That their stratagem, the like whatever it is, the filament mine or whatever the heck it's called, I can't remember now. I have played into that stratagem a few times before Shroud Runners were considered playable, because there's a guy locally that loves them and has loved them. And I remember the first time he hit me with it, I was like, "What are you talking about?" when he said what it did, I was like, "You don't have that in your book.
That doesn't
That's
exist.
a lie."
It's baloney.
Yeah.
Stir.
Why doesn't everybody run these? And then I saw the podcast, and I was like, "Oh, that's why."
That's
but
why.
Now.
Yep, I think they're phenomenal. I think they're one of the best things in that book. Did the Craftworld Eldar stats encapsulate the Yannari stats also?
Yes, they're included in there.
Yeah, beauty. So yeah, what else is in S tier?
Well, this is where we get to kind of. So we have Craftworld Eldar. Then I would say Iron Hands is the next one.
Yeah,
and then we have the two actual factual problems in the game right now.
The two actual standouts. It's not even questionable how much better these are than everybody else. But in what order? I'm interested to see what order you put them in.
So I'm going to say Gene Stealer Cults are number 2.
Oh, you're going to piss some people off.
And that's fine.
It's true, you don't.
They have the best win rate in the game. It's a 58% win rate right now in GT play, which is massive. It's not as bad as we've seen with other factions. But yeah, 58% win rate, 2.46 for their average first round loss.
And it's literally, I don't want to say it's just one unit, because it's not. It's the fact that they have phenomenally good secondaries. They're one of the hardest armies in the game to alpha strike, as in like versus Iron Hands, versus Votan, versus Guard. And versus Craftworld Eldar, that just have such great interplay at not getting swamped. In addition, Orcs as well. Orcs can't come within range of the blips turn 1. So if they just have such a good game into their contemporaries, into their peers. And yeah, like I said, Jackals are busted.
Jackals are busted. Demolition charges in general are an absolute like aberration. And we're seeing multiple builds. We're seeing like Neophyte Spam do amazingly well.
We're starting to see the transports come back to the fore as well.
Yeah, we see Dustin Henshaw doing extremely well running.
Eric Lathouris' last list as well also had 5 transports.
Yep. So he running trucks and Goliaths both, and having 25, 30 demo charges in a list is
Mhm,
not bad.
mhm.
And that's with running only like 10 or 15 bikes instead of running the max 30, like we've seen with most lists. But yeah, 58% win rate is problematic.
Absolutely.
2.46 average first round loss is an issue.
The only good thing is that in most people can't afford the models.
Yeah.
It's a very hard army to play. It's got a very
Yeah.
high, very extremely high skill ceiling. I would argue that maybe Harlequins and GSC are the two hardest factions in the game to play at the moment.
Yeah.
And
At least to remember all the rules for
to remember all the rules and convey them appropriately, so you're not just playing absolute gotcha hammer. Not that, and definitely not saying anybody is. But interesting. Tell me why you've put Dark Angels above them.
Well, part of it is the T-Whip. And average first round loss is the other part. So T-Whip, they make up 3% of the field. They are 5% of T-Whip. So it's only a little over 5. It's 5.5%. So they are roughly a 1.8 T-Whip ratio, which is amazing.
Yes.
It's very good. I have definitely seen way better in the past. But it's especially once you get to these lower play rates factions, it's not too hard to get a 2 or whatever. Still, 1.8 is respectable. They've had only 5 people go undefeated. They've hit a T-Whip 11 times. This is 11 times out of 90 players. So it's, like 10% of their player base is doing it. More than 10% is doing it. Dark Angels, except in win rate, are just putting up numbers better across the board. And it's because it's
easy.
It's a brain dead faction to play.
Because it's easy.
Yes. So
They're all boring.
They are the faction that has the highest T-Whip share in the game. They're only 5% of the field, unlike guards like 7.5. But yet they beat guard in T-Whip at 11.2. They're at 13% of G-Whip. So when the events go longer, they do even better.
They do even better. Yeah.
Their ratio is at a 2.2. So that's definitely in like the higher that I've seen. Their average first loss is 2.52, which, like, to put into perspective, I talked about how like old Iron Hands and Raven Guard got into that like 3 range. But like when over a long period of time, Iron Hands basically was between a 2.5 and a 2.6 for the majority of their time as a problem. Inari before that, which had been kind of considered the big problem prior, they had a brief window where they were amazing, but like when people still complained about them for months, they were at about a 2.3. So being at a 2.52 is extreme. They've had 23 people hit T-Whip. It's like 15% of their player base 15% of the people, 1 in 6, 1 in 7 players that play Dark Angels are at least going to go 4-0.
Yeah, that's wild. That's right. Wild.
They've had 13 people go undefeated, so just under 9% of the people that bring it. So 1 in 11 people will just go undefeated at an event.
Roll the dice, everybody. That's pretty good odds.
So, and it's really like, and whenever I talk to anybody, like, and I talk to 40K players all the time, at all levels. But when I like talk to like a lot of the better players and they tell me they beat a Dark Angels list, it's inevitably, well, the guy played like a buffoon, or the guy like didn't bother with objectives, or he only had 25 or 30 Terminators, so I was able to kill them, right? And then I talk to some guys that are just like, well, I want to play the Raven Wing because at least there's counterplay. It feels bad to run 45 Terminators, and it's not to say that 45 or 50 Terminators is a completely brain dead list, because I've watched very good players play it. When you can play it perfectly, it's devastating, right? Because most lists can only kill 30, right? Like exactly. A lot of the best lists for any other faction, you still have 60 wounds of Terminators left on the board when they're done.
It's just a stats check, and that's all it is. It's just the most extreme stats check that we have at the moment. It's the second most extreme we've probably seen this edition. Maybe Leviathan, Nids, or even Crusher was the only other one that was a bigger stats check. And it's, oh my God, I can't tell you how boring it is. I played it for about the first 6 weeks of the Codex when the Codex first came out, and I've never played a predominantly Deathwing list again. And I've only played Dark Angels up until literally the last 2 months. And it's if you're playing it right now, I hope you're finding your fun where you can. Hope you're finding your kicks, because it literally puts me to sleep. I'd rather be doing anything else.
Yeah. It's like, I did a little like a competitive innovations for Goonhammer recently, where I kind of went to town on a couple of the Dark Angels lists that were in the thing, because to me, and this is no knock on the players themselves, because I said in those articles, like, they're great players and I know
Yeah.
they are, but it's just like I think one of the things I said was people that are playing this game are basically playing single player Warhammer. Like like you move up your 20 or 30 of your Deathwing into your opponent's deployment zone. Turn 2, you do chaplain so that you can charge everything. And then if they somehow manage to clear them out, whether it's because your Iron Hands or Guard and you just have enough firepower to do it, you still have 15 to 20 Terminators plus character support sitting in the back waiting, right?
Correct. And one of the biggest pieces is the fact that you have such good character support. Like if you had to take a regular apothecary, not the one on the bike, that could zip to whichever place you're trying to invest in, like whichever place you're trying to dig him out on. Cool. If they didn't have a -1 damage banner, cool. If they didn't have 2 of the best characters in the game, in Talon Masters, and then you can take 2 of them, cool. There are so many things here that are better. But then again, I've seen players who take the 40 and sometimes 50 Terminators and do even less and win games, you know? But dude, that's
sometimes standing in the middle of the board and taking Oath of Moment and Stubborn Defiance, not the best option, but you almost max points just doing that, right?
By golly, you get the number goes up, you know? Yep. That's all we're here to see, right? We're here to put our little war dollies on the table and watch the numbers go up. But there's one faction you actually haven't mentioned yet, which is Renegade Knights, mate. Have you?
Oh, yeah, because I forgot all about them. No, I was going to talk about them when we were talking in that.
This is my favorite faction at the moment for a multitude of reasons.
And I would say they're a low B tier faction. They're average. And they should have been at the bottom of B tier. They have a 1.77 average first round loss, which isn't great, but they have a 47% win rate. They've hit T-Whip a couple times, or a few times. They've been undefeated a couple times. They're actually putting up slightly better numbers from a win rate perspective, significantly better numbers than their Imperial counterparts. So
there you go. How interesting. It's almost like, so Imperial Knights is a very linear army now that people have sussed it out. It really only does. You read the list and you pretty much, if you've played Knights before, you understand just about everything it can do to you. Where Renegade Knights is, man, it's always just ripping the roulette table. Are you going to be black or red? Are you going to roll, in the teens or whatever? Yeah, it's always wild. But anyway, that is unless there's any other factions you've forgotten, mate.
I believe that's everybody.
Beautiful. So, starting with our D tier, we have Imperial Fists, White Scars, Deathwatch, Admech, and Thousand Suns. C tier consists of Raven Guard, Salamanders, Chaos Space Marines, Tyranids, Death Guard, Imperial Knights, Drukhari, Ultramarines, Necrons, Sisters, and Tau. B tier is Renegade Knights, Harlequins, Blood Angels, Grey Knights, Black Templars, and Leagues of Votann. A tier is Custodes, Space Wolves, Orcs, Chaos Demons, World Eaters, Astra Militarum, and then C tier, Craftworld Eldar, Iron Hands, Genestealer Cult, and Dark Angels. I will note that the last time we did this, I'm just going to do a quick count. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 factions out of, I think, 32 in the top 2 tiers, as in A tier and S tier, and now we only have 10. So we've lost quite a few of the things have been distributed down the ladder more than up, is what I'm reading there. Which makes a lot of sense. Arks of Omen is extremely polarizing in so many different ways. But dude, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Anything else you'd like to mention about the rankings about the ladder before we close out?
Nope, I hate them.
That's fair. We're going to discuss our thoughts on Arks of Omen and the current state of the factions over on part 2. I hope you will join us. We've got some awesome questions to answer from our patrons. Also, a very spicy, very flashy new Discord server was just launched on the back end of things. If you want to get involved with that, come over to Art of War Down Under over on Patreon, which is the only way and only place you can find the part 2 of this episode. Plug the things, my Falcon.
Come to Falcon in June 10th and 11th, Moncton, New Brunswick. Be here, hang out with me, and other cool people. I'm sure there'll be more than me, but I'm the coolest. And
easily
go to goonhammer.com. It's a cool website. Sometimes I do articles. Other times I just read everybody else's articles and think these cool people are better at writing than I am.
But they're not you, and therefore not as cool.
And listen to Adam talk on like the 9 podcasts he's on. Although apparently
Yay.
Forge the Narrative has decided to go on hiatus because you're a bunch of jerks.
Paul Murphy produced and was on that podcast every week for 10 years, and he's decided to have a well-earned break. And then we're going to start the second season of Forge the Narrative.
Okay, Adam, I don't know if you understand. Maybe it's a Paul Murphy problem, but 10 years is not a season. That's foolishness.
Have you met Paul?
Yes, he is a slow talker. But like, get out of here with this is season 2.
But that's the joke. That's the joke. The joke is it's the end of the first season of the show.
Reforge the narrative. Get it.
That's right. We're gonna reforge that narrative. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Hopefully you'll join us over on part 2. Hope you've enjoyed this faction ladder update. And yeah, see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Art of War Down Under, a content review podcast for Warhammer 40K, hosted by Adam Camilleri, produced by Seamus Ronan. Enjoyed the show? Want your lists reviewed and the content you heard put into practice? Sign up to our Patreon and connect with us online or on Facebook. Just search for Art of War Down Under. Signing out from tomorrow.